There were two young players who were recently put on the trading block, and for today's video, I'm going to be discussing whether or not the Raptors could look to acquire them. So if you're ready to watch today's video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to Sher Khan and John Jakelik. Thank you to both of you for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about the first player on her list here. Now there was an article released by Raptors Raptor. This was, yes, talking about Sadiq Bay is the first player. Now this article went on to state that the Pistons might actually decide to reboot their roster just a bit. Sadiq Bay has reportedly been the most recent name that Detroit has thrown into the rumor mill. The Raptors will likely target young players that don't need to be paid quite yet, meaning that the Pistons could actually make a somewhat convincing offer to Masai Ujiri if Bay is actually going to be on the market per Jake Fisher. Detroit is listening on him. Now, I find this funny that they say the Pistons are going to make somewhat of a convincing offer to Masai Ujiri, where I totally believe it's going to be the opposite of where I believe Masai Ujiri could be making an attractive offer to the Pistons. Now, Sadiq Bay obviously is a very attractive piece. Now, why would the Raptors want him? He's 6'7". He's 215 pounds. He's 23 years old. He's a very attractive feast because he has the potential of a two-way player. Now, one of the biggest assets of Sadiq Bay coming into the 2020 draft was that he has the potential to be a really good two-way player. Now, obviously, he hasn't found success with the Detroit Pistons thus far early into his NBA career, but there was a reason why he was projected to go in the lottery, and he went just outside the lottery. Now, Sadiq Bay is actually a really interesting player because the Raptors obviously need a little bit of size. He can play the small forward position, he can play the power forward position at times. Not that we need any more power forwards, but he can also play the shooting guard position as well. 6'7" is very good size, and we know the Raptors like their tall, lengthy guys, and Sadiq Bay fits right into that. Sadiq Bay is also someone who can shoot the three-point ball, although if you were to take a look at his statistics, it doesn't necessarily reflect that. In his first season, he's shooting about 38% on 6.63 attempts per game. He took a little bit more threes. His percentages went down a little bit, and this season thus far, he's actually shooting terrible, 29% on 5.5 attempts per game. So you're probably wondering, why would the Raptors want to acquire yet another player who can't shoot the three ball? I think it's just one of those cases where he's going through a slump. He's actually known for a really good three-point shooter. He's also a decent defender as well. But you see, he can do other things outside of just shooting as well. He's a decent rebounder. Again, obviously, ideally, you would like him to average a little bit more rebounds, but it also depends on the people you're playing with. He's got Isaiah Stewart there, Cade Cunningham as well, averaging about 4.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists this season, and he's averaging 14.7 points in 31 minutes played, this season. Now, you're probably wondering, what makes him attractive to the Raptors? It's obviously his size, and his defense is a little bit interesting because he's one of those players, although he gets blown by a lot, he's adjusted a little bit better. He's a really good post defender. He's very physical. He's also got size as well. So I think, again, it's one of those cases, don't go by his three-point shot this season. He's struggling, yes, but he could be a really good three-point shooter. Now, obviously, the Raptors are going to have to make this very interesting because so far this season, when you take a look at his contract, he's making about $2.9 million, and he's locked into next season as well, which means that the Raptors don't have to pay him right away. And you need players like this because they have so many people that need to be paid this summer, including Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Pascal Siakam, who's eligible for an extension as well. So this essentially allows the Raptors to acquire someone like a Sadiq Bay, a really good young player who's got potential, but he doesn't need to be paid right away, which allows him to delay paying some of the other guys a little bit later. So again, a really reasonable contract. He's still on his rookie deal. But the question is, what could the Raptors potentially give up in a trade that would satisfy the Detroit Pistons? Now, taking a look at the salary cap, I know some people will be quick to mention throwing someone's name like Gary Trent Jr. The only issue is Gary Trent Jr. is making almost $18 million. So if you do trade for someone like a Sadiq Bay, you would have to include other players as well, someone like an Alec Burke. But the issue with acquiring more than one player in a trade for just Gary Trent Jr. is that the Raptors rosters is already full. So who are they waiving? I know people are going to be quick to suggest Malachi Flynn, but I just don't think they're ready to give up on him yet. I know a lot of fans feel some sort of way about him. I just don't think that's the case. But something along the lines of Alex Burke, Sadiq Bay, about $12.9 million could work out for a trade for someone like a Gary Trent Jr. Now, Alec Burke is actually averaging 16 points in 20 minutes played this season. He's a 6'6" shooting guard, and he could be a very, very nice piece for the Raptors off the bench. And of course, Sadiq Bay, very interesting if you do trade someone like a Gary Trent Jr. Again, not suggesting they do trade that. You can obviously do first-round picks. You can obviously throw in multiple players if you want. different guys throwing a first round pick. And I think the reason why, if the Raptors were to throw in a first round pick for someone like a Sadiq Bay before people are quick to say no, is because when you take a look at the Raptors' history and who they do draft a lot of guys that are age 22, 23 anyways. So you got someone like a Sadiq Bay who's had a few years experience in the NBA. He's also good size. He's a good defensive player who can shoot. Obviously, he needs to shoot a little bit better overall from his field on the overall from the field. But again, it's one of those players you can develop in your system, and then you also get some bench help from Alex Burke as well. But the funny thing will be that if the Raptors were, again, not suggesting Gary Trent Jr. is going to be traded in this, but if the Raptors do trade someone like a Gary Trent Jr., it ultimately opens up a spot in the starting lineup. Do you include Sadiq Bay in the starting lineup? Do you have Alex Burke there, who's, again, averaging 16 points in 20 minutes is very impressive? Or do you have someone like a Thaddeus Young and ultimately you bolster your bench by playing Alex Burke, Sadiq Bay off of the bench? Again, it could be a very interesting trade proposal. There could be some other pieces moved as well. Again, potential Malachi Flynn throwing a first round pick just for Sadiq Bay. That could be an interesting proposal as well. But I do want to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on Sadiq Bay? And let's move on to player number 2 here. Now, this news came out quite a while ago, and I had a lot of Raptors fans and Bleachers Report on Reddit talking about Emmanuel Quickly. Now, the New York Knicks did state that they would like a first round pick back in any trade for Emmanuel Quickly, but the issue is he's 6'3", 190 pounds. He's also a point guard as well. And he's also 23 years old. So if the Raptors were to trade him, you're essentially throwing away Delano Banton and Malachi Flynn's development. I know, again, ignore the second. I know people are not high on Malachi Flynn, but Delano Banton is a point guard that needs minutes, that needs rep at the point guard position. And I'm not saying I wouldn't trade for Emmanuel Quickly. The only issue is, do you essentially just slow down Delano Banton's development, or do you potentially throw in Delano Banton for Emmanuel Quickly? I personally wouldn't. Again, I want to quickly highlight his stats here before people jump at me about which player we shouldn't acquire. Looking at Emmanuel Quickly statistics here, the only thing about him is it almost seems like he's capped off his potential. Again, I know you can say that about Sadiq Bay as well, but when you take a look at his field goal attempts per game, he's essentially had these same field goal attempts throughout his 3 seasons with the New York Knicks, and his field goal percentage has consistently remained in the late 30s. And that's really bad for someone who's listed at 6'3". Again, 3-point percentage, you look at it, first season he shot great, and ever since has decreased as well. Now you're going to highlight that I was suggesting that Sadiq Bay is a good 3-point shooter, yet you're suggesting that someone who's shooting 32% can't be struggling. And I'm not saying that's not the case, that he hasn't struggled, or not that he's not a good 3-point shooter. The only issue is a lot of categories, when you go across the list here, has not improved at all. In fact, very little to no improvement in Emmanuel Quickly's statistical categories. I know people are going to be quick to point out that's the New York Knicks, but his point production, his rebounds, his assists, his steals have obviously gotten a lot better this season, but his free throw percentage as well. He's a good free throw percentage, but he has good free throw percentage, but his 3-point percentage isn't all that great. So again, Emmanuel Quickly could be an interesting player for sure. Do I want a player who's listed at 6'3", who's shooting in the late 30%? I know people are going to talk about Fred VanVleet, but if you are to acquire a player off of the bench that can back up Fred VanVleet for the time being, you at least want someone who can shoot a little bit better from the field. That's the only thing I'll see. And again, he's not necessarily someone who can facilitate greatly. He can pass a little bit. He's more of a shoot-first guard. Again, if you could make the argument that if you were to give Delano Banton 23 minutes a game, as Emmanuel Quickly here is averaging, he could probably put up similar numbers. There are a few things to take into consideration. Again, much like how it was with Sadiq Bay, if you are to trade for someone like Emmanuel Quickly, you do need to take salaries into consideration as well. And again, the good thing about Emmanuel Quickly, if you do acquire him without giving up a first-round pick, he's locked into his contracts for a couple seasons, meaning that you can delay paying some of the guys later on, or at least you can hold on to Emmanuel Quickly and not worry about having to pay him. So that's the benefit of acquiring young players. I think that could be a huge asset to the Raptors in acquiring guys that are on rookie deals, that aren't making a lot of money for several seasons, that are locked in. It allows you to really just balance out your salary and payroll. And before people suggest that, well, we have MLS, you guys have talked about this several times, we can play all our players. Yes, that's not an issue. But the issue is you're going to be pressed up right against the salary cap, or you're going to be in the luxury, and this makes trading very difficult, and not only trading, but also signing free agents as well. So again, Emmanuel Quickly, really interesting player. Got a quick first step, as his last name highlights here quickly. He's got an interesting 3-point shot that almost replicates Stanley Johnson, although he's shooting a lot better than Stanley does. But very interesting player. Someone who's quick, who's physical. Could be an interesting pickup for the Raptors. I personally wouldn't give up a first-round pick. If the Knicks want to deal around certain other guys without giving up a first round pick, maybe a couple of second round picks, I would definitely consider. He's definitely a good player. Don't get me wrong here. This is someone I would absolutely love on the Raptors, but I do want to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on Sadiq Bay and Emmanuel Quickly? Would you consider trading one of these players? And if so, which one would you target first, or which one would you prefer over the other? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, of the top 10 players that have made the most three-pointers in Raptors history, how many on that list are currently playing for the Raptors? Is it A1? Is it B3? Is it C2? Or is it D4? So whoever answers the trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.